The night stretched thick and suffocating over the quiet suburban street, where the air itself seemed to hold its breath, anticipating something violent and sudden. He pedaled slowly, the whir of the tires on asphalt the only sound cutting through the oppressive silence, the weight of the stacked pizza boxes pressing against his arms and shoulders, though that weight now seemed trivial compared to the sense that something was off about the enormous mansion looming ahead. Its towering gates, gilded and intimidating, glinted faintly in the dim light of the street lamps, and from behind the walls came the low, irregular thumps and metallic clicks of men moving with purpose, their silhouettes masked, unfamiliar, and dangerous. As he approached, a window flung open and a muffled scream pierced the night, followed by the clatter of objects being overturned, and his pulse quickened, the ordinary rhythm of his delivery job vanishing entirely in the face of this intrusion. Time seemed to dilate. Each second dragged as he assessed the situation, the doors of the mansion trembling under forceful pressure, shadows flitting like predators across the marble floor glimpsed through tall glass panels, and the distant echo of desperate voices bouncing off stone walls. Something in him surged beyond logic, a fierce, unyielding impulse that ignored fear, that refused the thought of running, compelling him to step into the unfolding danger. Every muscle taut and alert, senses sharpened to an almost unbearable degree. He moved closer, navigating the garden's sharp hedges and ornate statues, every step bringing him nearer to the masked figures who now realized an unexpected obstacle had entered their meticulously planned crime. And in that moment he felt the full, visceral weight of responsibility, knowing that someone's life, fragile and trembling just beyond the door, was now entangled with his own courage, or his own recklessness. The first confrontation was brutal in its immediacy, a whirlwind of motion where instincts collided with intent, as he managed to push a figure back, just as a door swung open violently, revealing the woman trapped inside, her expression a mixture of terror and disbelief. And though he had no weapons, no experience, he found himself maneuvering with a precision that felt preordained, each movement carving a narrow path through chaos, buying time that stretched unbearably long, hours, or what felt like hours, unspooled in those moments, each second laden with uncertainty, each heartbeat a drum in a silent, tense symphony of survival, until finally the intruders hesitated, disrupted by his relentless presence, their coordination unraveling under the weight of a single, defiant human standing in their way. When the final shadow fell back, retreating into the darkness from which it had emerged, the mansion itself seemed to exhale, the heavy stillness of the night returning like a reluctant sigh, and he turned to see her, standing in the doorway, the morning light beginning to spill across her face, revealing a calmness and strength that contradicted the fear that had gripped her moments before, and in that gaze, long and unblinking, he glimpsed a silent acknowledgement of what had just transpired, a promise etched into the space between them that bravery, once witnessed, never truly fades unnoticed. As the adrenaline ebbed, leaving a raw, pulsing ache behind, he realized the mansion's interior was a labyrinth of corridors and vaulted rooms, each more ornate than the last, yet now scarred by the chaos of the night. The woman moved beside him, her steps deliberate, her eyes scanning for any sign of lingering threat, and though she said nothing, the quiet tension between them spoke volumes, a silent acknowledgement that the world outside these walls had no idea what had just occurred. He followed instinctively, noting the subtle security measures embedded in the architecture. Hidden cameras, reinforced locks, the faint hum of systems designed to protect wealth and power, now rendered almost irrelevant by the recklessness of masked intruders. Every step revealed more of the mansion's hidden complexity. Staircases that spiraled like twisted ivory towers, hallways lined with artwork so valuable it seemed impossible anyone could risk damaging it, and yet all of it now hung precariously in the balance. A reminder that danger could strike even in places built to keep it out. The woman finally spoke, her voice steady but laced with a controlled intensity, directing him to a room at the heart of the mansion, a sanctuary of sorts, where the weight of the night seemed to press less heavily, yet no less tangibly on his chest. She explained in carefully measured words the stakes he had unknowingly confronted. The mansion was not merely a residence but a hub of influence, a center for decisions and operations that rippled across continents, and the intruders had targeted more than property. They had sought leverage, control, and chaos. The realization settled like a stone in his gut, the implications sprawling outward in every direction, intertwining his life with a world he had never imagined existed beyond his daily routines. And yet, amidst the gravity of that revelation, there was a flicker of something else, subtle and persistent, a recognition that what he had done, reckless though it might have seemed, had shifted the balance, had inserted him into a narrative far larger than himself, where courage could not be measured by ordinary standards, but by the invisible threads it wove through power, fear, and survival. The morning light grew sharper, cutting through the tall windows and illuminating the mansion's vast halls, yet the tension lingered, coiling like smoke in every shadowed corner. He moved alongside her, guided not by instruction but by instinct, a strange synergy forming between them, silent and unspoken, as though the night's events had forged a bond stronger than words could convey. In one of the side chambers, he caught sight of the traces left by the intruder's overturned furniture, broken glass, a trail of small, almost imperceptible markings that hinted at their skill and the seriousness of their intent. Each clue he noticed only deepened the understanding that this was not a random crime but a calculated strike, a probe meant to test defenses and intimidate, and the weight of that knowledge pressed down on him with a force he hadn't anticipated. She watched him as he pieced together the fragments, her expression unreadable yet intent, and in the way she allowed him space to assess, he sensed trust, a rare commodity in a world structured by power, suspicion, and strategy. Questions began to swirl in his mind. Why had these men targeted her now? Why had she been alone, and why had his presence, so accidental and inconsequential in ordinary terms, made such a difference in the outcome? The air seemed to thrum with possibilities, every room echoing with the ghost of confrontation, every shadow a reminder that danger was never truly gone, only paused waiting for the right moment to return. And amid that uncertainty, he felt a strange clarity settle over him, a realization that courage and action had consequences far beyond the immediate, and that the night had opened a door to a world that demanded more than he had ever been asked to give. A world of power, threat, and recognition where even a single act of bravery could resonate in ways invisible yet undeniable. Hours passed, yet the mansion seemed suspended in a tense stillness, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for the next movement, the next decision that could unravel or secure what remained of the night's fragile order. He followed her deeper into the house, corridors giving way to chambers filled with artifacts and documents, hinting at a life far more intricate and dangerous than he could have imagined, each item a testament to influence and wealth that extended across oceans and governments. She spoke rarely, her words measured, revealing fragments of a world constructed on strategy, alliances, and the quiet menace of those who sought to exploit any weakness, and he listened, absorbing more than the words themselves. The subtle cues, the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes darted toward entrances, calculating risk even now. Somewhere in the background, distant sirens murmured, a reminder that the world outside still churned, unaware of the storm that had passed within these walls, and yet, for all the gravity, there was an unspoken thread of recognition between them, a silent acknowledgement of the role he had played in tilting the balance. And then came the revelation that reframed everything. The masked intruders were not amateurs, but part of a network that had crossed paths with her before, shadows of threats that had always lingered just beyond the edges of her carefully maintained life. The weight of that knowledge pressed upon him, the realization that his actions had not only saved a life, but potentially disrupted a chain of plans that stretched further and wider than he could comprehend, and in that tension, he sensed both the danger and the rare, fragile trust forming, a bond forged in the crucible of fear and action, where bravery was measured not by survival alone but by the ripple it created in a world defined by power, secrecy, and unseen consequence. The hours stretched into a slow, almost unbearable continuum, the mansion's vast halls still humming with the echo of the night's violence, the residual tension a tangible presence pressing against the walls, filling every ornate corner and gilded archway. He walked beside her as she guided him through chambers that seemed almost alive with history and power, rooms where every painting, every sculpture, and every artifact whispered of influence, control, and the invisible currents that governed a world far beyond the ordinary, a world he had stumbled into entirely by accident. She spoke sparingly, her voice measured, yet in each carefully chosen word lay fragments of an empire he could scarcely imagine, a labyrinth of corporations' international dealings, and the quiet menace of rivals who would exploit the slightest vulnerability. With each step, the weight of what had transpired pressed harder against him, the realization that his presence had altered the course of events he barely understood, that a single act of instinctive bravery had reverberated through networks of power he had no right to touch. He noticed small details she did not explicitly point out, The subtle security upgrades now damaged by the intruders, the faint signs of panic that had rippled through her staff, the way her eyes scanned each doorway, calculating every angle of potential threat even in their supposed safety. And then the revelation struck, staggering in its implication. The men who had attacked were part of a network she had battled before, shadows of a war fought quietly, far from public eyes, where threats were neutralized or exploited long before anyone outside knew of their existence. His role, accidental though it had been, had not only saved her life but disrupted plans that could have spiraled into chaos, a single act in a domino chain stretching further than he could imagine, touching wealth, influence, and danger in ways that were almost impossible to measure. As the day slowly brightened, spilling gold and white across polished floors, he realized that nothing in his life would ever return to its previous ordinariness. The world he had glimpsed demanded vigilance, courage, and an understanding that heroism was never free, that each choice carried unseen consequences, and that the threads of bravery and loyalty were woven tightly into the fabric of power, where even a delivery boy could, if fate willed it, alter the balance of unseen empires and become a figure who would never, ever be forgotten.